Morning, everyone. We're going to make a start now. Welcome to workshop 6. This is the last in our series. The workshop will be running for 90 minutes and we'll finish at 1 o'clock. There is an opportunity at the end of the call today to stay on and connect with others. So it will be open for another 30 minutes to 1:30. So if possible, it'd be great if you can have your video on. This is particularly helpful when we move into the breakout groups, as it does improve the quality of the conversations that we'll be having together. We will be using Slido as well. And although this may be new for some of you, it is fairly easy to use. So if you will be using Slido, you need to get your smartphone ready. But those without a smartphone or don't want to use Slido, don't worry, you can still post comments and responses in the Zoom chat. So please share your tweets and experiences during and after the workshop. The hashtag links are there on the screen for you today. And if you're not speaking, if you can put yourselves on mute, that would be great. So this is the narrative arc that runs across the series of our 6 workshops. And we will primarily be exploring what this means for individuals' personal skills development, although we also want to pay attention to what it means for your teams, organisations, and the wider improvement community. The need to work collaboratively is more relevant than ever, and the skills to do this are more critical than they have ever been. We're sensing there is a real appetite for newfound collaborations to continue as teams look to the future. And one tool that might be used to support everyone in making this a reality is the Skills for Collaborative Change framework, developed by Q and Nesta, and looks at the skills and attitudes needed for collaborative change. It comprises of 3 overall skills: learn by doing, initiate change, and bringing people together. And the link for that resource should be in the chat. So from this framework, we shaped the series of 6 workshops. It was shaped by your needs and from the priorities that you identified in workshop 1. The results of those follow these themes within the Skills for Collaborative Change framework. So today we'll be focusing on the skill of seeing the wider system. It's about combining micro and macro perspectives to grasp complexity across the wider systems. And this theme permeates the workshops. We'll ask you to bear this skill in mind as you listen, share, and reflect throughout the course of today. So to support in our exploration of the skill of seeing the wider system, the team with us today is myself and Des as facilitators. We've got Sue and Mandy as logisticals and technical support, and Kieran and Christian as case study example contributors. So before we get into the main session, we're going to take a minute to reflect now as we ask ourselves a question. Using a scale of 1 to 4, with 4 being very confident, how confident are you in seeing the system that you work in? Now you can either use Slido or you can pop your answers in the chat. So on a scale to 1 to 4, with 4 being very confident, how confident are you in seeing the system that you work in? Just give people an opportunity, get some more responses in there. Like I say, you can use the chat if you can't use Slido. Everyone seems to be coming around a 2 or even a 1. So hopefully as we go through the series, keep that in mind and look to build on those skills as we progress through this workshop. So before we get into the main element, we do have some coming further up. That's brilliant. And with all the poll results will be included in our workshop report, which you can download off the website after the workshops. So before we get into the content, we're going to take 30 seconds to look at this image. So I'm going to ask you to pop in the Zoom chat what you see, but don't press send yet. We're going to type, hold, and then when I tell you, I count down of 5, we'll all post at the same time. Okay, so hopefully you've all got your chat ready to go. So if you can press send in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So we've got some mess there, yep. So we had a couple in there. It is very messy as well. So it is actually a Dalmatian or spotty dog. I think some of you got the dog, some of you got the Dalmatian. For those of you who it is, you can't quite see that. The dog is facing away from us. He's sniffing the ground and his black ear is falling forward. Its head and dark collar about halfway up the picture and about 1/3 of the way across the frame, and its rump is near the right-hand edge. So hopefully a few more of you can see that now. But this well-known puzzle picture reveals its secret if you allow yourself to see the pattern of relationships between the black blobs. So by studying individual blobs, it doesn't actually reveal very much. And it is with seeing the system in which we work. It is the same. Einstein is reported to have said that if he only had 1 hour to solve a problem, he would spend 55 minutes defining the problem and then the remaining 5 minutes solving it. Properly understanding the problem or challenge we want to fix needs skills to be able to see across that system and skills of collaborative problem solving for solutions that affect the whole rather than the parts. And this is something that we will be considering in our time together today. So we're going to take a minute to reflect now again as we ask ourselves another question. What barriers do you face when seeing the wider system? Again, you can use Slido or you can pop your responses in the chat. So you can see a mixture of elements in there: complexity, complication, different viewpoints, sometimes overlooking key facts. And we're working through, keep these in mind as we work through also learning from our peers, but also in our discussion sessions as well. Excellent, thank you. So we're going to now move into learning with and from our peers. And I want to introduce you to Christian and Kieran, who will be sharing key learnings and themes emerging from their current work and how seeing the wider system is the integral approach to what they do. So I'm going to hand over to Christian and Kieran, but please do use the chat or Twitter throughout the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dominique. And good morning. Thank you so much for this opportunity to talk to you today about the journey that we've been on, looking to develop Communities for Change Wales. So my name is Kieran Humphreys. I'm a consultant in public health and I work for the Wider Determinants of Health unit. Christian, if you'd like to.
Yeah, my name's Christian Heathcote-Elliott and I'm Principal Public Health Practitioner and also works in the Wider Determinants of Health unit.
Great, thank you. Mandy, if you could move on the slide there, please. So we're interested in the Wider Determinants of Health, which is really about what makes us healthy. We know what makes a person healthy and what causes the health inequalities that we see in Wales. So factors like our education, our surroundings, the money and resources, the built environment, all these factors have an enormous input on health outcomes in Wales. Next slide, please. And Wales has got a really strong policy background around the wider determinants of health. So the Future Generations Act really is a manifesto for those wider determinants. It's about setting the ground to have healthy communities across Wales. But what you can also see on the right is what's been happening to life expectancy in Wales. And this is a graph showing the deprivation quintiles, so levels of disadvantage. And what you can see is at the bottom there, those from the most disadvantaged parts of Wales have an enormous gap in how long they can live, 8 or 9 years compared to the least disadvantaged areas. And what's worse is in the run up to the pandemic, for those most disadvantaged, that gap is getting bigger and life expectancy is starting to go downwards. So policy is not enough. The reasons why this is happening, of course, are very complex, not all based in Wales, but good policy alone needs more. And that's how we started to focus on, well, what can we do to help change happen, really to move from having good policy to having good implementation. Next slide, Mandy. And we're quite a small team, but one thing that we do have is a Public Health Network Cymru. It's a network across Wales. It's got over 1,800 members, all with an interest in improving health. And at the moment, its focus has been on sharing information, exchanging information. We've got regular webinars. If you're not a member, feel free to sign up and get involved. But what it didn't do was really try and influence change. Move on, Mandy, please. So we thought, okay, well, maybe the network can help us do this. And really what we want to do is see how we can bring people together for collaborative change. And that's what we're going to discuss with you today. So Christian, over to you to talk about what we did next.
Okay, thanks, Kieran. Next slide, please, Mandy. So when we started this journey, we quickly realized that actually this wasn't about wheel reinvention. There's a lot of work already out there about collaborative change. What was important to us was that it was actually fit for purpose. So a bit of like the water wheel, that is made of wood, but it's fit for that purpose, as is the car wheel is made of rubber, so it absorbs bumps. So we wanted an approach that was fit for the needs of what we were attempting. So we developed our approach firstly by identifying existing change approaches, particularly those used in the health sector, such as large-scale change, quality improvement approaches, the public health innovation model, and Nesta's people-powered results. We secondly undertook a snapshot grey literature search using citation tracking with a research question that particularly looked at what methods are most effective to engage individuals from multiple organisations in achieving collaborative goals. And thirdly, we spoke to subject experts, particularly from Nesta and their people-powered results team, Improvement Cymru, and also Etienne Winger, who is the person who derived the communities of practice. And we wanted to learn from their experience and what they felt were critical factors in delivering successful change programs. Next slide, please. From this, we developed a blueprint for accelerating action. Next slide, please, Mandy. The blueprint outlines the key principles of the approach. And in addition, as you can see on the left-hand side, it describes the core components of the approach. And these, as I said before, were derived from the Gray literature and discussion with subject experts. These components we viewed as essential ingredients. The blueprint also outlines the change cycle, and this has 3 distinct phases. The first phase is preparation, where the facilitation team would work with the senior leaders of the collaborative, very much in thinking through what they wanted the collaborative to achieve, what the goals are, what success would look like. The second phase is an action phase, which would last up to 100 days. And the third phase would be after the 100-day phase, and to follow up to look at what actions following the action phase were sustained and indeed were any scaled up. The blueprint also contains a how-to section. So for each slice of the cycle of change, the how-to guide outlines the purpose, describes what good looks like, key questions for facilitators and leaders, and contains tools and activities which will help facilitate the action phase. Next slide, please. We wanted to test the approach on a multi-sectorial change effort within a wider determinants of health topic, with a view of running the test between October 2021 until the end of March 2022. We sent out an expression of interest for a 2-week period to all our Public Health Network Cymru members, detailing the approach and the offer to support a multi-sector collaborative for a time-limited period. Although we had a number of organisations contacting us to find out more about the approach, we only received a limited number of applications. I think with reflection, it would be fair to say that we had a mental model in our heads about how organisations would firstly see the value of the approach, how they would see the additional resources could help them in delivering their change efforts. And also we had made some assumptions about how much time they needed to have internal conversations in their organisations. Certainly some of the conversations I had with organisations were interested in knowing more about the approach, suggested that the timing might not have been right in terms of their planning cycles, and that they needed more time to attain buy-in from senior leaders within their organisations. Next slide, Mandy. Despite the lack of applications, we did have a strong application from Cwmtaf Local Public Health Team on behalf of Cwmtaf Health and Housing Partnership. Cwmtaf Health and Housing Partnership was in the forming stage, and from initial conversations, it was clear there was a strong will in the partnership between health and housing partners to work closer together with a view of improving population across the Cwmtaf University Health Board footprint by improving access to and the provision of quality housing. The Cwmtaf Local Health Board had made a firm commitment towards population health and in focusing on the causes of poor health and inequities, rather than specifically just focusing on healthcare. It was also clear, talking to the senior leaders, that there was a clear energy and momentum to look at a manageable change within the time-limited period of the Communities for Change process. The Cwmtaf Health and Housing Partnership wanted to focus the efforts of the collaborative on developing a mechanism for information sharing between health and housing partners. So it was important, I think our reflection is that the image at the bottom, that actually the conditions were right within Cwmtaf Health and Housing Partnership. And finally, it was important that the organisations had shared values. In particular, there was a culture of working together, reflecting through learning from experiences, and also showing each other mutual respect and trust. Next slide, please, Mandy. The wider Determinants of Health unit is a small team, so for the test the Communities for Change Wales approach, we had secured money for a temporary 6-month improvement manager post. Despite receiving a number of applications, we felt that none of the applicants had the right blend of skills, knowledge and experience to oversee the tests of the Communities for Change Wales approach. We then had to think laterally and consider a consultancy approach so that the test of the approach could go ahead. Kieran reached out to the WCVA to see if they had any suggestions. They suggested the Co-Production Network for Wales, who operate on a consultancy basis. We had early conversations with their director, which suggested they had a good understanding and a good fit around the approach that we were trying to test. We also have now benefited in the fact that we have 3 members of staff contributing to testing the approach, and one in particular who has actually had experience of running 100-day challenges in the People Powered Results team. Next slide, please. Over the last month, the Communities for Change Wales delivery team have run 2 preparation workshops with the senior leaders in Cyntaf Health and Housing Partnerships. Very early on in these preparation workshops, we realised that there were different perspectives amongst the senior leaders on how ambitious they wanted the challenge for the collaborative to be. Secondly, we realised that a key core component of the approach that we wanted to test was around coming up with different solutions and testing and iterating these. At this stage, we are not sure the degree to which Cyntaf Health and Housing Partnership Collaborative will be doing this in their 100-day action days. Thirdly, it would be fair to say that we are new to working with another organisation in delivering this change approach, and that we've had to flex on several occasions. So this really is a learn by doing approach. Next slide, please. In the preparation workshops, we've worked closely with the senior leadership group to really consider the goals that they want for the 100-day challenge. And as this picture shows, there are potentially different horizons. And often, as you know, when you go rock climbing over hills, that you might get to the summit, and then there's another summit beyond that. So we've really worked hard in getting the partnership and collaborative to really think about, so what is the goal for the 100-day action phase, and how does this relate to future goals? Secondly, we're considering in terms of what would actually be a goal for the partnership in terms of its endeavours, not just around improving and developing a mechanism for sharing information around health and housing. And thirdly, from our perspective, we are interested in terms of the approach and around, does it develop a particular mindset that then could be used for other endeavours within the different organisations taking part in the collaborative. I'm now going to hand over to Kieran for some observations and early feedback from the senior leaders taking part in the collaborative.
Thank you, Christian. So we got in touch with 3 of the leaders just before the session to get a feel for what they thought, their impressions of how it had gone so far, bearing in mind we're still at relatively early stages as this progresses. And I've got 3 slides just showing what 3 different people thought. So this is one person who, as you can see, views it as helpful, informative, timely, challenging in a positive way, recognizing that health and housing is a really big subject area, but that this project helps them move on and open doors which will be of benefit to local communities. That it's good to be in a room with professionals and other organizations with the same passion, understanding, imaginative thinking and willingness to want to contribute to positive change. So I think that kind of helps us see how this approach can help people if the time is right. Next slide, Mandy. This is another person who's got kind of two different points I wanted to make. This isn't their actual photo, so they are not identified here. But they were asking questions about the proportionality of the approach. That this level of facilitation, costs public money. Are there better ways to spend that money, and could the group have just got on with this themselves? That is proportional to the task at hand, and if the task were much bigger, would the techniques work in that circumstance? But on the other hand, the same person has also said that it has galvanized partners into action. It has allowed people to move forward in a practical way, and when we see that otherwise people may have struggled, and recognizing that often good ideas just run into the sand, and that this mechanism has helped the partnership to move forward quite quickly past that stage. Next slide, please. And then the third view is really recognizing the value of facilitation within that wider system context. That facilitation supports the principle of co-production. By having people helping the leaders, it gives them permission to work collaboratively, bringing their skills and knowledge, and allows them to pan out and see the bigger pictures, but also to zoom in using their individual expertise and specialists' work to make that work progress. So, I mean, from my point of view, that it feels like the work is certainly valued, that people see how it can add to what they do, but that we're all learning about where it adds most value and how that's going to work. Next slide, Mandy. So finally, it's a kind of a question for us. Will we get a Pearl? We're in bringing this Communities for Change approach. See ourselves a bit like the grit and the oyster. We're not going to produce a pearl ourselves, but we hope to provide the challenge, the material, the facility to allow that pearl to grow that might otherwise never be created. Some of the things that to us seem really helpful on the journey so far, the very aligned values. So all the partners are very clear in what they want to achieve in terms of helping health and well-being through improving housing conditions. They've got that common purpose, and for them the timing was right. There was very senior high level commitment to doing work in this area, and they were just ready to get going on a project like this. But there does remain some uncertainty. So we still don't know how this will pan out, but our experience so far and facing the various challenges that Christian has outlined is that giving it a go is definitely worth it, because the unexpected can actually be better than what you do expect. So next slide, please, Mandy. Finally, I'd like to thank all those who've been involved, particularly QLab Cymru and all the partners on the slide. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Kieran and Christian. And I love the two analogies in there, the grit and the oyster, but also the various summits. I know my children are always horrified when they get over one and then see the next one in the background, but it's a good way to think about it as well. So just going to provide an opportunity for people in the session to reflecting on what you've just heard. So either using chat or Slido, or you can open your mics if and raise questions or share your reflections. What has stood out for you in what you've just heard? So if people want to come off their mics and share their reflections, that'd be great. Don't have to put your hands up, just join in. Hiya, Joe.
Hi. Thank you for that. It was really interesting to hear about your approach. I think one of the things that struck me was when you showed, you reflected that the conditions were right with the people and the partners that you went forward with. And I guess it's a question that's a real challenge, isn't it, about how do we make sure that the conditions are right for more places. I know that there's a lot of reflection that you've really got to go where the energy is, and that's a really important part of achieving change. But yeah, it's just that question for me, isn't it, that where you had that nice image of the sort of the desert, and then the nice one of like the nice looking soil with the shoot and this kind of seed coming up. Yeah, what do we need to do to make sure that there's less desert and more fertile soil?
Christian, Kieran, I don't know if you've got any reflections on that. How do we make more places fertile?
It's a difficult question.
It's $1 million question.
It's a
it is.
major question. I mean, I think some of my... Sorry, Kieran, go through.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think just some observation that I would make is that we actually probably did have some other organizations that actually their conditions, apart from the timing, was actually probably right, but it just was the timing in their planning cycle. I think they did have the energy. And you know, I think there was, so sometimes I think it will just be, it's also that just that critical timing point of when there is those kind of whole sets of factors all together that will almost allow those shoots to grow further.
I was going to say something a little bit similar, Chris, actually, taking that kind of growing analogy a little bit. There are different seasons, aren't there? And you know, some seasons you plant your seed, and you know it's winter and it'll just die, and other times it's you know spring and things are ready to go. You know your monsoon or your kind of dry conditions. So sometimes it's not so much about the soil is poor, but you've just arrived at the wrong time for it to grow, and you need to be patient and wait. I think that's as Christian said, was probably our big feeling from the discussions we've had, but also just reflecting on this particular partnership. You know, I think an awful lot of groundwork has been done in this particular health board, where the Director of Public Health has worked very hard with his own organisation. His annual report has really focused on those wider determinants and been quite influential. And I think, you know, we didn't go into the 9 core elements, but one of them is sponsorship. It needs that senior buy-in if we're going to make change happen, because otherwise people are just pushing against the tide all the time. And I think that was achieved in this case, and that's one important element. But it's a really good question. Food for thought. Thank you.
Thanks all. Any other comments or reflections? I think one of the bits that stood out for me was that that power of exploring views on a shared objective. Often we think we've got a shared objective, but actually spending the time to explore those differing views, sometimes it does surface a lot more that we're assuming. You've got different organisations then, Christian, that you're working with different values, different, or possibly different language as well, and different shorthand for things.
Yeah, and certainly that's, I think, in terms of the ambition, that's what really came out around how, so obviously this is around developing a mechanism for information sharing. So it was, so where do you think we'll get to by 100 days? And people did have different perspectives on that.
Well, thank you for your time today. I'm going to hand over to Des, who's going to take us through the next section of the workshop.
Great, thank you, Dom, and thanks again, Kieran and Christian. Much appreciated. So now we are going to go on to the next part of our workshop, where we will engage in learning by doing. To get us started, can you please use Slido or post into chat your definition of the wider system? I'll just give you a few seconds to do that. I'll also give the opportunity if anybody wants to come off mic and actually just let us know verbally your definition of the wider system. Okay. All components to deliver an outcome. People, organisations, power systems, and structures that are relevant to but not directly engaged in. Start to end point. And all contribution factors that cause effect. got another one in the chat. So thank you, Christine. So relating to or extending throughout a system, affecting or reaching the whole of the system. I mean, there's an interesting one there. Tricky systems is jargon that I now use as a catch-all. Yeah, just to let you know, if you, I actually Googled the wider system earlier today, and there are nearly 12 billion search results and over 5 billion for systems thinking. So yeah, there is no single correct answer to this. As I think Don mentioned earlier, there is something about language and different language and how we use that in our individual practice and when we are collaborating. So thank you for sharing that, and I think we'll touch on more of that as we move along. So moving on, according to the research of Laura Cabrera, who's a PhD at Cornell University, and Derek Cabrera, also a PhD at Cornell University, they're a husband and wife team, our choices are based on a universally applicable cognitive framework, DSRP. Distinctions, systems, relationships, and perspectives. I'm going to briefly explain each individual part of DSRP. But before I do that, please, in practice, they operate simultaneously and in no particular order. So neither distinct systems, relationships, nor perspectives exist in isolation. So for example, recognize a system of parts, the relationships among those making distinctions. In terms of distinction making and the distinction rule, this is around focusing on some things and omitting others. It consists of defining what the problem, issue, or thing is that you're focused on, and also what it is not, the other. This is an act of boundary making, which is a critical idea in systems thinking. Unconscious distinction making can lead to marginalizing the other and a lack of awareness of the sources and the consequences of our boundary making. So how we draw or define the boundaries of an idea or of a system is an essential aspect of understanding them. And I know which one I'm focused on in that particular image. So applying the systems rule. So this is about simultaneously incorporating reductionism, so splitting things into their constituent parts, and holism, seeing everything as part of a larger whole. So as Don mentioned earlier, it's around those macro through to micro systems. When we apply the systems rule, we recognize that what is a part of one whole can also be a whole in itself, composed of different parts. How we draw or define the boundaries of an idea or a system is an essential aspect of understanding them. Moving on to the relationships rule. Relationships are a central focus in systems thinking. For example, the idea of feedback loops. The relationships rule is characterized by two elements, action and reaction. When we are problem solving, we often look for relationships of correlation, some of which may involve cause and effect. Systems thinking often emphasizes the complexity of relationships, seeking out webs of causality rather than single linear causes. Much of the complexity and many of the unique properties we might see in a system are attributable to the relationships among the constituent parts of a whole. Since they are often the hidden dynamics of systems, identifying the relationships among parts of the whole is critical to systems thinking. The perspective rule is made up of two elements, a point, so the thing which is doing the seeing or focusing, for example, us as individuals in our practice, and a view, the thing which is being focused upon or seen. For example, the wider system in which you work. Conscious application of the perspective rule requires that we acknowledge that what we perceive as reality is really a mental model, just one of many ways to frame information, and we proceed to identify the perspectives that make up that model. For example, good and bad are just different perspectives. So when we are reflecting on what is not going right across a system, let's keep this in mind. Now, we've only touched on a little of the DSRP model, and there's a link that will be put into the chat to the website where you can find out more.